This is our beginning lecture for our CS 4020 class, and the topic is technology and ethics. So in this lecture we're going to talk about some of the rapid pace of change in technology. We'll give a few examples of some more recent important technology changes. We'll discuss some issues and themes. And finally, we'll introduce some beginning terms related to the field of ethics. So, technology has evolved a lot over the years, and in terms of computer technology specifically, or technology related to computers, it really began in the 40s, where we had our first kinds of computers built. These were machines that really could only, in essence, kind of do a few things like calculators. Hard drives came into storage, first kinds of programs, and then kind of jumping ahead past that, and personal computers and all of those things that happened in the early 80s. We move into the 90s. And the advent of the web, certainly lots of technology in space, as well as in the automotive industry. You see development of that. The web began around the mid-90s, which was another explosion of technology, computer technology. And then in the early 2000s, we have the advent of social media, and at the same time, we have kind of the big boom for cell phones and mobile devices, which brings us into kind of today's frame, where we're looking at things like autonomous vehicles. Vision and AI are really kind of exploding right now. There's also, certainly other things that are part of that too, like some of the e-commerce things with Bitcoin and other technologies. So one of the things that kind of helps ground you in thinking about the changes that have happened over the years is, can you think of what devices that are now computerized that were not originally? And thinking back to 10, 20, 50 years ago. So certainly phones are an example of that. Can you think of anything else? Simple devices like clocks, even things today like ovens, appliances of many different kinds. Cars are more and more computerized these days and controlled through electronics. So a few examples, recent examples that really influence today and a lot of the issues related to computer ethics. And the first one, of course, is the web. The web has affected a lot how we communicate and deliver information. As part of that presentation, the World Wide Web involves the idea of hypertext markup language, or HTML. So it's the idea of not just textual information, but also other kinds of media like images and video. So video and the explosion of imagery and media, audio also on the World Wide Web is a big trend. As part of that, there's a lot of network sensors like cameras. There are more cameras in London that are actively used as surveillance than there are people. So certainly in certain situations, the prevalence of media and sensors on the web is even greater than people. Commerce is a big part of the web. Amazon.com is probably one of the most famous sites out there. There are certainly, when you go to other countries, they have like Baidu, They have their own versions of Amazon in other countries, but really it's taking over from physical stores. Jeff Bezos is one of the, I don't know, last time I looked he was the richest man in the world. And if you take a look at how Amazon is taking over in this chart here, from actual regular store, physical store-based sales, it's enormous, and prediction is it's going to even increase. So today it's very hard to find bookstores. As you know, that was Amazon's first foray into e-commerce, was selling books, and I am going to predict that pretty much things like malls and other physical stores are really going to go away more and more, especially as we start to get into things like self-driving cars and drones for delivery. And when we start adding AI and computer vision and things like virtual trying on of clothes and things like that, it's going to become more and more. If you've ever seen The Jetsons, if you haven't, go search on the web. That's an old cartoon show, which was a futuristic show. It's going to become more and more like that. But some of the issues related to that and how that's going to affect the worldwide economy and jobs are real serious questions. Video, I mentioned that actually before when we were talking about web and communication, but certainly video, that's actually my area of research, has exploded recently. It's not just used for entertainment, but certainly that's a big part. In America, the #1 user of the internet is Netflix after 6 p.m. That gives you an idea of how much video is important to people on a daily basis. But video is not just for entertainment, but is being used in many different areas, in medical imaging, in surveillance, in navigation. You can see a few images there. Really, as you use imagery, as a sighted person, that's where video technology can be utilized in the future. Cell phones and mobile devices have had a recent huge explosion. You use it for everything, for travel, for maps, for buying things, of course, for communicating, for taking pictures, playing music, entertainment. There's been a lot of issues with cell phones, something you might consider exploring in some of the work that we'll do in this class. Cell phone and driving has been prohibited. Interestingly enough, there's studies recently that suggest that it really doesn't remove the distraction, because just even talking is a distraction. But it does, of course, help some. Cell phones, mobile devices have other issues with regards to privacy, the use of cameras, and recording audio, but it has affected us in a number of ways. Social networking started, really the boom started with MySpace, which was founded in 2003, and then Facebook came afterwards, and since then we have many different kinds of social media. We have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all kinds of social media, even YouTube you can consider social media. Security is a big issue today. There's been a number of companies, everything from things like VeriSign to commercial, commerce-oriented like PayPal, that deal with the exchange of secure information. I mentioned to Bitcoin, that's a newer technology that is looking at creating a digital currency, how that's going to affect the world when you can have a single currency that's digital, is going to be really interesting to see. One of the reasons why the web really exploded was the existence of a lot of free stuff. There still is a lot of free stuff. we'll talk about net neutrality a little bit later, but up to now, this has really helped to explode the use of the web. Places like YouTube, right, where you can create your own media and have it shared with others is really important. But there's other things, even like Viber, Skype, doing voice over IP, job sites, and university lectures, so education is a big thing as you're watching this on YouTube, right? So people can have access to education. Advertising is an important part of the web right now. It pays for a lot of the free sites and services, but not necessarily all. This is a primary way, for example, that Google and sites like it, Yahoo, make their money. But it can be invasive. There's issues of privacy. There's privacy concerns and how companies are gathering demographic information and maybe following you as you search. I guess that's a question, again, something you could explore in some of the work that we're doing in this class. Artificial intelligence has been around, that topic has been around for quite a while, in some sense since the beginning of computers. And it's the idea of basically trying to make computers intelligent. One aspect or one view of that is to try to make them act like a human. So pattern recognition, computer vision, when you're doing visual things, speech recognition, these are all areas that are related to each other and related to AI. Data mining, right? Even advertising and advertising recommendation uses pattern recognition, uses the basic tenets that also are used in AI. So on the bottom right, you can see there is a figure showing some of the different ways AI computer vision kind of can be used. You see recognition, learning of information, finding and classifying objects in a scene. And the image on the left really kind of is something to think about in the back of your mind when you're thinking about technology and the ethics of it. How does it change? And I would say, well, this is a very human-oriented picture. There's a bigger picture than this. How does it change our environment? How does it change our world? How does it change our universe? Here we can see, you know, we're evolving from the apes, and here we've got our cell phone, and now we've got wearable devices kind of in the middle. And then what is the future? Are we going to be, you know, part cyborg, right? And then finally, you know, our brain, right? Are we going to have, how are we going to be able to communicate directly from our brain using technology in ways that we can't fathom right now? Just a fun fact is when we're talking about AI, there's a famous thing called the Turing test. And this is a way of trying to determine if a system actually has an intelligence to it, is considered intelligent. There are some philosophers and researchers that think computers will never be intelligent because they'll always lack some of the capabilities that humans have. For example, a computer might be able to win a chess game, but it might not know what it means to win, right? Or have the feeling of winning, right? So you could potentially say that that lacks a kind of intelligence that the human has. But nonetheless, here's a test. It's developed by Alan Turing, who is a famous computer scientist. Look him up. But the idea is if you have an interrogator or someone asking questions, and behind there could be a person answering it or the computer, and you can't tell whether or not it's a computer, or if you think it's a human and not a computer, then that would mean it passes the Turing test, that it actually has artificial intelligence. And there are famous systems. I'd like you to look up IBM Watson, and it's an AI system that actually is geared towards this kind of Turing test to pass for speech. It has speech recognition and understanding, and can respond to questions with seemingly human intelligent answers. Robots, again, kind of related to vision, AI. These are generally involve some kind of a mechanical device that performs some physical task, and it could be something traditionally done by humans, or it could be something totally different in an unsafe environment or in a foreign environment like space or underwater where humans can't go, and would be hazardous to them. So some of the pictures that we're seeing here in the upper left, you're seeing a picture of an actual robotic surgical system. In the lower left, you can buy these even at Costco and other places, some of these little robots that do cleaning of the floor. And interestingly, that was developed by a female engineer who was studying robotics, who wanted to create a robot system to help her mother. In the middle is some of the trends that you see now, and you can buy them for like about $3,000 or so. Is these kind of I don't know what they're termed. They don't have like an actual name for them, but they're like personal robots, and you can actually have like a camera, so you could like be present, let's say, in a meeting, and the robot can move around, and you can virtually be there. They're kind of like virtual assistants. And on the right, we see a real manufacturing line, in this case for autos, with various welders and different robotic arms that are being used. So this is not the whole range of where robots are used, but it gives you kind of a big idea of, from the low end, the cleaning robot, to the surgical robot, or the very specialized manufacturing robot, what's going on. Human assistive technologies is something that I'm interested in, and is the idea of trying to assist humans with technology. So there's lots of different examples for that: screen readers, scanners, speech recognition, prosthetics. And here I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and we're going to watch it together.
To detect common objects in the scene. The TensorFlow framework is used
So let's back up. Sorry, I didn't have the audio.
daily visual tasks. Eyesight uses deep learning to detect common objects in the scene. The TensorFlow framework is used to optimize runtime performance on mobile devices. Both the location and identity of objects are detected. Eyesight visualizes in large viewing mode the detected object using one of three strategies: icon, enhance, or cartoon. A simple, iconic representation of the detected object is presented to the user in icon mode. In enhanced mode, eyesight magnifies and applies image processing routines to the detected object area, which clearly shows the user the detected object. Eyesight's cartoon mode emphasizes high-frequency detail in a magnified view, which can assist the user in better visual understanding of the detected object. It works particularly well on organic objects, like the detected person in this scene. Next up is a demonstration of eyesight being used by a legally blind person.
Welcome to Eyesight. Simply point your device in the direction you are walking and Eyesight will be your assistant. Laptop. 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 Cup. Bed. Chair. Person. Couch. 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 Chair, chair, chair. Chair, chair. Chair, chair. Orange. Laptop. Laptop. Microwave. Oven. Orange. Microwave. 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 Oven. Oven. Microwave. Oven. Microwave.
For more information about eyesight or iLab, contact Professor Lynn Grew at the email shown, lynn.grew@csueastbay.edu.
Okay, so returning now, you can watch that again on your own. This just gives you a little insight into some work that I'm currently doing. I'm really interested in assisting humans with technology. Okay, so smart sensors, in a way we just saw an example of that because we saw a mobile device that we're actually utilizing. As we talked about before, in London and many big cities, there's more cameras and sensors than people. But they're used, in artificial intelligence, vision, robotics, more. Self-driving cars is an example of sensors. The goal here, of course, companies like Google and Uber want to replace human drivers. They have multiple sensors, as you can see here with the diagram. Quite expensive. Well, expense is relative, but probably everything together on this system would cost thousands of dollars, not under $1,000, and quite heavy, as you can see the gantry on the top of the car. So at this point, we're kind of in the prototype side, but a couple $1,000s to add to a car is really not that much compared to the salary of a human being. So besides the ethical issues of unemployment, there's lots of other issues about like what will happen with accidents, who is liable, those kinds of things. Here's another example. I'll let you click on this on your own, so you can pause this video and you can go to the original PowerPoint and find it. But one of the other systems that I've worked on is called Blind Bike. This is assistive technology and is not a self-driving bike like the self-driving car, but it's related in that it's supposed to assist low vision people with the task of biking. And it's a very beginning prototype system that looks at trying to just use a cell phone rather than those couple $1,000s, maybe $10,000 of equipment and something entirely too heavy like the LiDAR here to mount on a bike. We're just mounting a cell phone. The system doesn't work as well as I'd like to, I'll be honest, but it's beginning stages, and as time evolves and more research will make the system hopefully be affordable and work reliably. So what's next? Your imagination as a computer scientist should answer that question. But drones, right, is an area. One of the things that I'm working on, or going to start working on soon, is some iDrone technology, like a seeing eye drone rather than a seeing eye dog. Again, in assistive technologies, but in biology, in everything from records to augmented reality, entertainment. So what will our future be like using technology? So one of the things I've asked you to do in this class is to create answers to the technology questions posted in here. So you can pause the video and you can go to our Blackboard website. And I want only a single posting for all of the answers to all the questions in this lecture. Okay, so one posting for all of the answers. So issues that we brought up and just exposed at a very beginning level are issues of unemployment. We talked about drones, self-driving cars, talked about loss of privacy, certainly with the distribution of cameras. What happens, what results from errors in technology, like car accidents, but other things can occur, loss of money, loss of life in the case of medical surgery, right? But some other things that we haven't really explored and stuff that we will talk about in much more detail in this class are issues like crime, and of course privacy, security. Another issue is alienation and addiction. So society and technology. I guess the first question you can ask is technology good? Seems like a simple question, and I think in reality it has a lot of different answers, and every person could have a totally different answer to the same question. It might depend, right, on the situation and scenario. But I believe that for every technology that's invented, there is a potential and real negative that can happen with regards to society. If you look at things like robots, right, it can help produce things in dangerous environments that we wouldn't want human beings to be in, but it also takes away jobs, right? So is that good? Is that bad? Do we have more free time as humans? Is there enough money to support the humans that don't have jobs? Will there be an equal number of jobs taking care of the robots and building robots that are replaced by them? I guess what I'll say in answer to that, and it's a common sense answer, is that two things. One, we ultimately are not going to be able to control the creation of new technologies. Now, certainly we'll talk about laws and policies that countries have and can create regarding certain technologies. But those laws will change and can be different in different countries. So it means that those technologies will most likely, like if you consider cloning, it is legal in some countries. It will be developed. So if we can't completely control the development of a technology, then how we respond to it and how we adapt to it becomes very important. And what I'll say is, if you look at the evolution of technology going back to recent things like the printing press, okay, and how that changed how books and printed media was distributed, it didn't overall catastrophically affect our society. It changed our society, and I would say in general for the better. So I am optimistic in how we respond and use technology. So how does it affect us? There's a lot of different ways technology can affect us, and I'm going to pick on cell phones as an example of that. There's a number of recent medical studies that talk about the overuse of mobile devices and their physical effect on our necks and hands. Communication changes. This is something that everyone talks about. The distractions. People don't even look at each other when they communicate often. You can see here the little comic. The woman's asking if she could strap the guy's phone to her forehead so she could pretend that he's looking at her, right? The weapons of mass destruction, right? How does it affect you? That's a little tongue-in-cheek. Some of you I know love and cannot live without Facebook, Twitter, what have you, but it has genuinely affected the way humans communicate and think. And I don't think we have yet really seen the effects of that because it's been with the mobile devices, which for many of you, you may not have had as young children. So it's really the kids that are like, let's say, 13 and younger that have grown up with these devices from an extremely early age, and how that's going to affect their thought processes and the way they communicate. Psychological, we were kind of leading into that, but addiction is a real issue with these devices. There was a really interesting study with Google Glass, which was a technology that was very controversial. If you recall, a few years ago, San Francisco and a number of cities outlawed the use of Google Glass, and as a consequence of that, that product really disappeared from development. And it was because of privacy issues, people being recorded by Google Glass. But there was a really interesting study that showed, and it was actually showed addiction of Google Glass, that the people who were using it in this study, their eyes were flickering left and right, and they couldn't focus. You see there's studies where there's 2-year-olds who take pieces of paper and try to swipe them left to right as if they're actual tablets. So addiction is a really strong issue with regards specifically to mobile and wearable devices. And here's a little study that shows how they feel when a person feels when they can't find their phone. And you can see people are extremely panicked. That's almost 3/4 of people. Desperate, sick, and then only 6% feel relieved. And I wish I could say I was in that 6%, but I think I'm somewhere between relieved and something on the left. I'm not desperate or panicked, but nonetheless, I actually feel the effects of not having a phone, and I know, at least I know for myself, that that is a negative feeling. So veracity and truth, with all of this information floating around, there is this concept of what is true, what is real information, and who can you trust. There's a lot of changes, especially again with this kind of younger generation, let's say 20 and younger, this idea that your friends are more important than experts, which is scary, frankly. Taking medical advice from your friend versus someone who's studied multiple years. And there's this idea of winner-take-all attitude that honestly leads to bullying and lots of other bad social scenarios from social media. So the little fun, kind of oh my god moment, OMG moment, that I thought I'd share with you. I was looking for some various images and scouring, and I found the image on the right, and it says emotional intelligence statistic, and it says $29,000. People with high EQ, which is I've never heard of before, but stands for emotional intelligence, make $29,000 more than their lower EQ counterparts. Now, this is according to this guy. You can click on the link and take a look at it. And frankly, this is not necessarily a reliable article, but I wanted to bring it up because it's this idea of, are things changing? This almost implies like it's not important to know facts. It's just important to how people visualize you, how your friends, here's that Twitter thing, thinks that you're the winner and not the other person. And that's really scary at a level that I can't explain. It's like a science fiction novel. So anyways, just something kind of fun to think about. So moving on to our lecture, talking a little bit about themes and the global reach of the net is a theme that we will explore in this class. We'll explore things like trade-offs between and controversies related to technologies. Security generally means less convenience. You have to go through extra steps to be secure. It can be more invasive, but the trade-off is it's less likely that people will have access to data you don't want them to. We'll talk about laws, we'll talk about organizations, we'll talk about business policies and personal choices, all related to computer ethics. One thing that recently happened was a new change to the FCC rules. There's a basically the end of net neutrality, which I am personally really sad to see happen. I think there's going to be a lot of bad issues at a consumer level and at a bigger level of business. And what do I mean? Let's talk about some of the things that might happen. Companies like Comcast and Verizon could block free content. They could slow video streaming from rivals and offer fast lanes to preferred partners. This particular passing has banned states from passing their old version of the old rules. It can mean a shift towards subscriptions that provide unlimited access to certain providers and charge extra for everything else. And so at a consumer level, that's going to really hit you. But at an even bigger economic level, it could mean a really drastic effect on entrepreneurship. We live in Silicon Valley, and here's a little quote. Net neutrality is incredibly important for small startups like Discord because all internet traffic needs to be treated as equal for us all to have access to the same resources as the big companies, said Jason Strichen, who's the co-founder and CEO of a video game chat and video conferencing app called Discord. So what that means is it's going to be really hard for a small company to be able to afford. In fact, I would say it's not going to be possible, not just hard, to afford to compete with larger companies that can afford to pay for their bandwidth and that get that bandwidth cheaper. That's going to seriously affect startups. This is my personal opinion, but I think it's a terrible thing that has happened. So here's some examples of things. Comcast customers in 28 states face 1 terabyte data caps. Going over that, you have to pay more. That's a consumer level. Verizon stops customers from accessing 4K content unless they pay for unlimited again. So here is another place for you to pause and answer the following question. Again, a single posting for all of your answers to all the questions is what I want on the discussion board. Sorry about that. Fuck. Ben, can you just turn it off? So what is ethics? A few definitions to help us start our class off. The ethics is the study of what it means to do the right thing. It assumes that people are rational and can make free choices. And basically it also involves rules that are made to follow in interactions or actions that affect others. So there are some different ways of, or different viewpoints to think about ethics, and here are some definitions that I might ask you about. And the first one, and they're also in your reading, is called deontology. Oh my God.